There are certain things I've noticed that a lot of successful musicians have in common. Not all, of course, and success can certainly mean different things to different people. But if you're serious about this stuff and your music and are interested in hearing more about it and can take it to heart, then make sure you watch till the end of this video, because even if you can demonstrate 4 of these 5 things, it could be the one that you're missing that might just be holding you back. All right, so first up, and perhaps the most important of all, is attitude. Attitude is everything, and it can take you a long way, even if you're not the greatest musician. One of the only books I've ever read in my life was the Silver Book by Gene Simmons. And he's talking about his life and all the things that he did with Kiss to help them be successful. And early on, they weren't that great. He claims he was never the greatest musician. He could just kind of keep up with the guys and just, be in the pocket, and that was what was important. And their band wasn't very big, and they weren't really gaining a lot of traction. But what they did is they made themselves look larger than life. They presented themselves in this big rock star fashion, when none of the other bands had like big lights out on stage with them or pyrotechnics and things like that. Kiss did. And it made people think, wow, these guys must be huge. And sure enough, they went on to be one of the biggest bands ever, right? So that's just one aspect of attitude, the way you think about things, thinking larger than life, thinking next level, thinking big picture. Beyond that, it's the typical type of attitude stuff that we all know about. Having a positive attitude, being friendly, being resourceful, wanting to help out, being courteous and polite to venue staff, other bands on the bill, things like that. We've all kind of heard that saying, fake it till you make it. Well, that's pretty true, because as I mentioned, not even being the best musician, if you have a great attitude, a lot of the time, that's more important. Jim LaMarca, bass player in my band Chimera, he was never as technical of a player as a lot of us other guys in the band, but he had something that held us together, that really helped build our chemistry. He was always joking around and making everybody laugh. He would interact well with the crowd and the fans after the shows, before the show, stuff like that. On stage, he was that guy. Oh, as a matter of fact, Gene Simmons from Kiss is his favorite bass player. Kiss might be his favorite band. He's got a Gene Simmons tattoo. So he was the guy on stage like, to the crowd, where I can never do that stuff. I never liked being like in the spotlight. I always thought, man, it'd be better to be the drummer, just to be able to hide behind a kit, but I had to be up front. I did the best I could, but I could still never have that attitude that Jim had, that rock star charisma and stuff like that. And not only to have that on stage, but he had it back at the rehearsal spot too. While we were writing songs, he'd be excited about ideas and helping to move those ideas along, making sure people were there and involved, always making people feel welcome. If, somebody from the band hall came in to watch, oh, come on in, check it out, that sort of thing. Just a great attitude that really held things together. So you could be an Yngwie Malmsteen level guitar player, shredder, or whatever, but if you're just kind of somebody that nobody likes, you're probably not going to get very far. So make sure you prioritize just having a great attitude about everything, and then I think things will really start to fall into place. Keep that in mind. Next up, practice. You know what they say, practice makes perfect. And it can be hard because not everybody is great at practicing. It's hard to stay focused and motivated. And I'm not talking about just running scales all day or just practicing a riff over and over again until your fingers bleed. Not like that. We'll get into some more good practice techniques, at least that I've learned over the years. But first, I want to start with a little story. Back when I was probably 14 years old, went to my very first recording studio with my band. None of us had ever gone to a real recording studio before. We had never heard our music recorded other than a tape player in the room and anything like that. But we're there with a producer, somebody who we respected just because he seemed like he knew what he was talking about, and we're having a good time. We recorded a couple tracks, and I'm sitting in the control room with the producer, and we're listening, and he's trying to mix some stuff. And I say, oh, I want us to sound like Pantera. I want to have that Pantera sound. And he looks right at me and he goes, well, if you want to sound like Pantera, I think you guys should go home and practice. And I'm just like, whoa. Because that might turn a lot of people off. You know, you're here paying this guy, giving him your money to record you, and here he says something like that. But for my young, impressionable mind, that made a big impression on me. You better believe that I've thought about that till this day. We certainly went home and we practiced. I mean, we finished the session and all that, but we practiced hard and just started thinking about everything with a different mindset, being real tight. And then the next time we came in to record, months or a year later, something like that, our next recording was way better. We were better musicians. We were more locked in. Obviously, we had played together longer, but we were practicing because it was told to us straight up, like, hey, this is what you need to do. So at any rate, back to what I was saying about just running scales over and over again, there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but it's quality practice. Thinking about what you're practicing and listening to what you're practicing. It was somebody like, I was reading this guitar magazine when I was young, it may have been like Nuno Benancourt or something like that, was saying that when he's trying to learn a lead or a lick or a riff or something, as he's going through it over and over again, he would never allow himself to move past a mistake. So as he's running something over and over again, he gets to a part where he messes up, he wouldn't just continue on. He would start over again and made sure when he got to that point again where he'd messed up before that he hit it again. And if he didn't, he would start over again. And this way he'd make it a little bit further and further and further each time along. Every time he'd go through it, perfecting everything he had already gone over until you get to the end, and then you're fluid throughout that whole passage. So I took that to heart, and I would always implement that coming up when I was playing. So that's just very important. And also throughout that whole thing, listening to what you're practicing, listening to how the notes sound, and just the cadence of the riffs and the phrasing and how things are going. So good practicing technique and being diligent about it and disciplined is very important so that your guitar playing sounds clean and good, your timing is great, you have pockets so that when you're jamming with other musicians, it all falls into place. And beyond just practicing your instrument, there's practicing things like taking care of your instrument. There's practicing being on time, as stupid as that sounds, practicing setting up your gear, tearing down your gear, stuff like that's important when you're playing shows and there's a 15-minute changeover or less. You know, being professional and being rehearsed with your own gear is very important. So again, I'll finish this off with practice makes perfect, an essential trait that people just overlook or take for granted. Another good one is learning some of your favorite songs. The more songs you can learn from a variety of bands, the greater your style arsenal will be. If you learn, just for example, leads from Slash and riffs from Dave Mustaine or James Hetfield, or, you know, for anything, drums, bass, whatever, from all sorts of different bands, learn some Zeppelin, some Beatles, all that kind of stuff. Just learning how they do things, their techniques, songwriting, riff arrangements, song arrangements, how many verses and choruses they have, all that. Just so important for building your encyclopedia of playing ability. I get asked all the time by guys, how do I know what riff to go to after this verse riff? Or how do I connect these riffs and stuff? And I have a formula that I think works if you're willing to actually put in the time and do it. Take 3 to 5 of your favorite songs of all time. Let's say it's Enter Sandman, Paradise City, and Jump from Van Halen, whatever. You take those songs and you just reverse engineer them. How long are they? What key are they in? Is there an intro? How long till the first chorus hits? How many verses are there? How many choruses are there? Is there a bridge? Is there an outro? Is there a guitar solo? How long are each of those sections? What are the dynamics like in terms of the highs and the lows? Is there clean versus distorted parts? A combination of all those things. In death metal, blast versus groove. Is it blast all the time? Anyways, you break all that stuff down and you compare it and take the sum of those things and then put together your own song based on their arrangement. You're not stealing anything. You're just taking a structure based on your favorite material and then putting your own riffs into it. And I bet you if you have 3 to 5 riffs and you can pump them into an equation like that, a song equation from a format like Enter Sandman, you'll be better off than you were before. But even if you're not into songwriting, or you're not looking to do a band, just learning a little bit of country, picking, learning a little bit of some jazz stuff. You know, I didn't do those things. I can't play any country licks and I can't play any jazz licks or anything like that. But I did this for metal and it paid off by just learning a ton of Megadeth, a ton of Metallica, and being diligent about making sure they sound good, that I was precise, that I could play along with the records. It takes time, it takes practice every day for a while until I get up to speed, till my picking was super tight. Those are the type of things that you got to do if you want to kind of take it to the next level. Learn other people's material and learn it well. Moving on, one thing that I think is so important is knowing your instrument and your gear. Again, seems obvious, right? But a lot of guys focus on other things and overlook certain things like just making sure your instrument's in tune, knowing how to keep it in tune, knowing how to change your strings proficiently, knowing how to deal with your amp and work with your amp. Going to shows, do you have a speaker cable? Did you bring a speaker cable? Do you have a speaker cable for somebody else in case they need to borrow one? Being resourceful is huge. If you're a singer, knowing your microphone, knowing the microphone that's given to you at a club, how to handle that, how to handle the monitor situation. What do you need in your monitors? A lot of this stuff you learn through experience, but just food for thought. What do you want in your monitors? Do you want the whole band? You'll probably get blown out by that. Maybe you just want kick, snare, a little guitar, and your vocals. How loud do you want your vocals so you're comfortable and you don't blow out your voice, but you can still hear yourself? If you're a keyboard player, did you advance your input list to the front of house engineers at the club? And an input list is like, what kind of channels are you gonna need? Do you just have a right and a left? Do you have 6 channels? An input list for your whole band. That's part of being professional and prepared and knowing your gear and everybody's gear. Knowing your bandmate's gear. I was always the guy in the band that something needed to be fixed, I would take a crack at it. And again, that comes down to being resourceful, which is such a huge thing. So I guess all these are intertwined. Like I said, if you only have a couple of them or even 4 of them, one thing you could be missing could be the one thing that's holding you back or whatever. So just being well-rounded and having all these traits in your pocket will make you a desirable band member. And so, you know, relating that to myself, being able to fix stuff, knowing other guys' gear, if there was a problem on stage at shows, being, oh, that's the problem with that, let me help with that. Or, yes, we have another one of those cables. Yes, I have that particular tool, things like that. Tools, knowing tools and just how to take care of your gear, what you need at the show, where your cabinet is gonna sit on stage if you're a guitar player and what that's gonna sound like to you. What does your cabinet sound like live to the audience? Are they gonna be hearing that or the PA system? There's just so many variables and it's just important to just know this stuff. Now, you could take a band like Motley Crue or whatever like that. I think I've used this analogy about something else in the past, but all those guys cared about was, you know, girls and whiskey and whatever, you know. I find it hard to believe that, like, you know, Nikki Sixx knew a ton about his gear, but deep down he probably did, or he hired people that did. And early on, you fake it till you make it. Is that applicable here? I don't know, but I think it's better not to fake in this department, and just knowing at least your own stuff inside and out is a very valuable trait. Finally here, the last thing I'm gonna talk about also has to do with gear, so we're just gonna stay here in front of this beauty, and it's about prioritizing playing over gear. Because I hear all the time people talking about how, oh, we gotta switch out the pickups. What strings you play, what pickups, what amps, all this kind of stuff, when it's really the playing that's most important. I think too many people get caught up in the idea that the gear is gonna provide them with the tone or their sound that they're after, when really a great tone and sound comes from the hands, heart, and mind. When you're just thinking about a certain set of pickups that's gonna give you that extra edge, that's really gonna make your music pop or something, that has nothing to do with it. I always say Eddie Van Halen could pick up some beat up Walmart acoustic off the shelf with only 3 strings and still just shred it way harder than any guy who's got the sickest, you know, PV stack at home and the greatest guitar. So, but I'm not throwing any hate either. I realize that there's a huge world around gear and how people covet that and just the excitement around it. I'm excited about gear too. I have a ton of stuff too, but fortunately early on for me personally, just acquiring a bunch of gear or doing stuff like that wasn't an option for me. It was just strictly playing. It's all I had. And so it forced me down a path of crafting my style and developing my chops and stuff, which then later in life afforded me amazing gear and any option that I wanted anytime with anything. But unless, if you don't care about that, that's totally cool. Lots of people just want to open their wallet and get the stuff that makes them feel good inside, and I 100% get that. So again, no hate. But I think really to take it to the next level, prioritizing your playing over your gear is huge, because I'm just going to be redundant here, but playing is just so much more important. You're going to get where you want to go quicker. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you, and I hope you're armed with a little more knowledge of things that I know, as I'll say it one more time, are so obvious, but sometimes, like the producer told me as a young musician, was straight up with me, people need to hear it straight up, that these are the type of things you need to practice to give yourself that edge to make it to the next level. Good luck to everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're not, check out everything I got to offer in the description box below, and I hope to see you all in the next one.